It lasts just 10 seconds. There's no music. The impact is messy, loud, and unpolished. But that crash in Bullitt became the blueprint for every gritty chase scene that followed. And here's how it happened. McQueen gets the wheel. He didn't just star in Bullitt, he ran it. As executive producer, he had final say on everything from the director to the tire tread, and he wasn't interested in faking it. If there was going to be a chase scene, it had to feel real. That meant no backdrops, no studio trickery, and no stuntman close-ups. McQueen handpicked British director Peter Yates after seeing his work on Robbery, a film that had a raw car chase through London. Yates knew how to shoot movement. McQueen gave him one instruction: make the chase look like it's actually happening. He also fought hard to do his own driving. Insurance hated it. The studio panicked, but McQueen pushed anyway. He wanted audiences to see it was him behind the wheel. Not a double, not a rear projection shot. Real streets, real cars, real danger. To sell it, McQueen trained with stunt coordinator Kerry Lofton, a veteran who'd worked on The French Connection and Vanishing Point. Lofton taught McQueen how to slide through corners, handle fishtails, and keep the Mustang stable on those brutal San Francisco hills. McQueen also tapped his production company, Solar Productions, to oversee the chase. That gave him full control of how it was shot, edited, and performed. No one could cut corners. Even the choice of cars came under his influence. McQueen picked a 1968 Ford Mustang GT 390 Fastback, a car that looked mean but didn't scream luxury. It had muscle but not polish, perfect for his gritty detective role. For the villain, they chose a 1968 Dodge Charger RT 440, louder and heavier, built like a battering ram. This wasn't about flashy spins or exploding gas tanks. McQueen wanted a chase that felt dangerous because it was. By the time cameras rolled, everyone knew they weren't making a standard action flick. McQueen had raised the bar, and when it came to the wheel, he wasn't letting go. Choosing the Mustang and Charger. The cars in Bullitt weren't just props, they were characters, and Steve McQueen wanted them just right. He didn't want flashy sports cars or brand new showroom models. He wanted muscle, grit, noise. The hero car? A 1968 Highland Green Ford Mustang GT 390 Fastback. No racing stripes, no spoilers, just a raw, stripped-down look. It wasn't about being pretty, it was about power. McQueen worked closely with Ford to get two of them, both modified under the hood. The engines were tuned, the suspensions reinforced, and the shock absorbers upgraded to handle the brutal San Francisco jumps. For the villains, they picked a 1968 Dodge Charger RT 440 Magnum. Sleek and black, it had a more aggressive growl than the Mustang. And it was faster in a straight line. That contrast wasn't accidental. The Mustang was nimble. The Charger was a beast. The chase would feel like two different fighting styles crashing into each other. The crew also made subtle tweaks. They debadged both cars, no logos, no shiny emblems. They removed the reverse lights from the Charger and painted the Mustang's grille black to make it look meaner. This was about tone, not glamour. Inside the cars, things got even more technical. Roll cages were added for safety. Cameras were bolted to the interiors. The cars were gutted to reduce weight and improve handling. Everything was built for function, not comfort. Bill Hickman, who drove the Charger in the chase, even helped prep the vehicles for stunt work. He knew how they needed to handle and pushed for practical adjustments. Stronger brakes, tighter steering. By the time shooting started, these weren't stock vehicles anymore. They were tuned for war. McQueen wanted the audience to feel the weight of the cars, every reverend, every screech, every bump. And thanks to these choices, the chase wouldn't just look fast, it would sound and feel dangerous from the driver's seat. Laying out the chase in San Francisco. No backlot could handle what Bullitt had planned. Steve McQueen wanted the chase on real San Francisco streets, And that meant shutting down traffic, blocking intersections, and working with city officials who'd never seen anything like this. Stunt coordinator Kerry Lofton was the guy who made it possible. He mapped out a route with director Peter Yates, picking spots that looked amazing on camera. Sharp corners, steep hills, tight curves. Even if it meant cutting between totally unrelated parts of the city, they built a sequence that felt seamless. The plan wasn't to race fast, it was to make it look fast. San Francisco's hills gave them natural elevation and speed drops. When the Mustang hit those jumps, all four wheels left the ground. And that wasn't a visual trick. Those were real, high-speed launches. To get the shots, they used a special camera car called a mount car, rigged with multiple angles. Some shots came from the bumpers. Others were mounted inside the driver's seat to catch McQueen's face. The sound crew also mic'd the engine bays to capture the raw roars of both the Mustang and Charger. The city gave them limited hours to film on each block, which meant some scenes had to be rushed. They filmed the chase over 3 weeks, often out of order, then stitched it together in post-production. What looks like one continuous run actually takes place across half a dozen neighborhoods. And yes, locals noticed. People gathered just to watch the cars tear through their streets. Some even ended up as background extras without knowing it. There was no room for error. One wrong move on those hills and a car could flip, or worse. The team rehearsed endlessly, but still, not everything went according to plan. Hiring stunt drivers. McQueen was skilled, but even he had limits. So, to pull off the most dangerous scenes, the crew brought in the best: Kerry Lofton, Bill Hickman, and Lauren Janes, all legends in the stunt world. Kerry Lofton, the stunt coordinator, had one rule: keep it real. No fake speed, no camera tricks. If the car looked fast, it had to be fast. He chose Bill Hickman to drive the Dodge Charger. Hickman wasn't just a stuntman, he was also an actor. He played the assassin in the Charger, which meant the guy doing the wild driving was also the guy behind the wheel on screen. For the Mustang, Lauren Janes stepped in when McQueen couldn't risk it. Janes was McQueen's regular double and had worked with him on past films. The two looked similar enough that with the right camera angle, no one could tell the difference. Janes handled the riskiest jumps and sharpest turns while McQueen focused on the close-up driving shots. McQueen still did about 10% of the chase driving, mostly in scenes where his face had to be clearly visible. That's him shifting gears, taking corners, and reacting behind the wheel. But when the stunts got wild, like the jumps, Janes took over. Hickman's scenes in the Charger were all him. His driving was fast, smooth, and aggressive. He kept close to the Mustang, even during the tightest maneuvers. In one shot, the two cars nearly collide while weaving through traffic. That wasn't staged, it was just Hickman riding the edge of control. The three drivers worked together to choreograph the chase like a fight scene. It had rhythm, it had beats, and most of it was rehearsed on location just minutes before filming. McQueen trusted these guys. And it paid off. Without them, the chase wouldn't just be unsafe, it would have been impossible. Filming begins, and it's brutal. By the time cameras rolled, the team was already exhausted. They had 3 weeks to shoot the chase scene, and nearly every minute was chaos. This wasn't a studio lot. It was San Francisco in real time, and the crew had to adapt fast. Filming days started early, usually before sunrise. Streets were shut down for only a few hours at a time. That meant no second chances. If a shot didn't land, it had to be reworked on the spot. Director Peter Yates ran multiple cameras at once just to capture every possible angle in one take. The chase was filmed out of sequence. A left turn might be shot on day 1, followed by a jump that wasn't filmed until a week later. The editing would connect it all, but during shooting, it was a constant puzzle. Every bump, scrape, and squeal was real. The Mustang and Charger were pushed to their limits. Tires shredded, suspensions groaned. At one point, a car blew out its rear axle and had to be patched up overnight just to make it through the next day's scenes. Inside the cars, things got wild. Cameras were mounted directly to the dashboards and roll bars. That meant drivers were wedged into tight, uncomfortable positions, trying not to jar the equipment. The footage was shaky, but that's exactly what they wanted. Some shots show the camera rattling or bouncing with the car. That wasn't a mistake. It was part of the raw, unfiltered look McQueen and Yates wanted. You weren't just watching a chase, you were inside it. And it wasn't just about speed. The Mustang and Charger both hit speeds up to 110 miles per hour during filming. On city streets, that's borderline reckless, but with precision drivers and tight coordination, it worked. Still, even with all that planning, things didn't always go as expected. In fact, one moment wasn't planned at all, and it became the most famous part of the chase. The mistake that made history. There's a blink and you'll miss it moment in the Bullitt chase that wasn't scripted, and it changed everything. During one of the final chase setups, the Charger slammed into a parked camera car. Total accident. But what they caught on film was pure gold. It happened on a downhill stretch near a gas station. The Charger, driven by Bill Hickman, took the turn too hot. The tires couldn't hold. The back end whipped out, and Hickman couldn't recover in time. He clipped the camera car parked just off frame, hard. The impact lasted about 10 seconds. You hear the squeal, then the smash. The Mustang swerves, trying to avoid debris. The whole moment feels wild, unpolished, and dangerous. That's because it was. The crew was stunned. One of their main camera units was totaled. Gear was wrecked. But when Peter Yates and the editor, Frank Keller, watched the footage back, they immediately knew this was staying in the movie. The raw energy of that scene couldn't be faked. It didn't follow the choreography. It wasn't part of the mapped-out route. But it felt real. And in a movie built on authenticity, it was perfect. Audiences wouldn't know it was an accident. To them, it just felt intense. But that 10-second mistake did more than elevate the scene. It raised the bar for how action could be filmed. It proved that raw, uncontrolled moments sometimes carry the most weight. McQueen signed off on it immediately. He knew what they had. And once it was in, there was no taking it out. No retakes, just one smash. Once that crash happened, there was no backup plan. The Charger had slammed the parked camera car hard enough to destroy the rig and part of the crew's gear. But the footage survived, and it looked incredible. Still, now the team had a problem. There was no way to reset the shot. In most films, a crash like that would be rehearsed, shot from multiple angles, and edited together for maximum drama. But Bullitt wasn't built like other movies. There was no second Charger, no identical stand-in, and no time to recreate it. That hit was a one-time deal. If they couldn't use it, they'd have to rewrite the chase. Director Peter Yates and editor Frank Keller made a bold call. Don't just use the footage, build the entire second half of the chase around it. That 10-second sequence became the spine of the back half. Everything else was tailored to match its tone, energy, and visual flow. From there, the action gets tighter. The Mustang and Charger weave through traffic faster. The close calls feel closer. The stakes feel higher. And it all stems from that moment when the Charger lost control. What makes it work is how unpolished it looks. The shot's a little shaky. The angle's imperfect. But that's what sells it. You're not watching a choreographed stunt. You're watching something that feels out of control, and that's what sticks. To make the edits seamless, they reused clips from earlier in the chase. Yes, the same green VW Beetle passes by more than once. Yes, some locations repeat. But viewers were too locked into the intensity to notice. Behind the scenes, that 10-second accident caused panic. Equipment had to be replaced. Schedules were rearranged. And everyone walked a little more carefully around the Charger from then on. But in the footage, it's gold. No explosion. No music swell. Just rubber, metal, and instinct. The kind of moment that's impossible to plan, but unforgettable when it happens. Stitching together the final cut. When shooting wrapped, The chase was a scattered mess. Hundreds of takes across different neighborhoods, angles, and times of day. The pressure was now on editor Frank Keller to make it flow like one seamless pursuit. What he pulled off wasn't just impressive, it won him an Academy Award. Keller had to take disconnected pieces, footage from Potrero Hill, Russian Hill, and the Marina District, and arrange them into a single adrenaline-fueled sequence. Continuity? Thrown out the window. Keller didn't care if the background changed suddenly or if the same Volkswagen Beetle showed up 5 times. What mattered was rhythm. To build that rhythm, he cut by feel, not location. Shifting back and forth between interior shots, wide angles, and close-ups, he created a heartbeat. You'd see Steve McQueen's face for just a second, then slam into a hood-mounted shot of the Mustang launching over a hill. Then a quick cut to the Charger gaining ground. It was about momentum, not logic. Even the sound design was reworked. Most of the engine audio was added in post, and not always matched to the correct cars. Sometimes the Mustang's growl was actually dubbed from a GT40. But the mix was so raw and aggressive, no one cared. The audience wasn't nitpicking engine specs. They were hanging on every shift and squeal. The biggest challenge was pacing. The chase ran over 10 minutes, which was long by any standard at the time. Keller made sure every second counted. He kept the audience off balance by avoiding music entirely. No dramatic score, no cues, just engine noise, tire screeches, and the occasional shotgun blast. It felt like surveillance footage more than cinema. Keller's edit also smoothed over inconsistencies. Steve McQueen's Mustang lost 6 hubcaps during the chase. Keller cut around it. The Charger takes a wrong turn and comes back. Keller made it look intentional. It's editing as illusion, turning a jagged puzzle into a clean, relentless pursuit. The studio freaks out. When Warner Brothers saw the rough cut of Bullitt, they weren't thrilled. The movie felt raw. The chase was loud, long, and totally unlike anything they'd approved. There was no music, no glamorous angles, and one random crash that no one had planned. Executives were nervous. First, the length. A car chase running over 10 minutes? Unheard of. They thought audiences would get bored. Plus, McQueen wasn't always in frame, which made the suits question if he was even driving. Second, the footage felt unpolished. Shaky shots, repeated cars, and real street chaos didn't match the clean studio action they were used to. But Steve McQueen stood firm. He backed Peter Yates and Frank Keller completely. He told Warner Brothers, "This is the scene people will remember." He wasn't wrong. Even so, the studio considered trimming the chase or reshooting parts of it. But there was a problem. There was no time and no backup cars. The Mustang had taken a beating. The Charger wasn't in great shape either. There was no way to recreate any of it without starting from scratch. To test the waters, Warner Brothers showed the rough cut to preview audiences. The reaction? Electric. Viewers cheered when the Mustang launched off a hill. They gasped during the crash. And no one seemed to care that the same green Beetle circled through the scene more than once. That preview changed everything. The studio dropped their demands. Not only did they leave the chase alone, they used it as the centerpiece of the film's marketing. Posters, trailers, and press materials focused on the cars, the realism, and McQueen behind the wheel. Even critics took notice. Time magazine called the chase a cinema milestone. The New York Times praised it for rejecting glamour in favor of grit. And once the film hit theaters, that 10-second crash nobody planned became the most talked about moment on screen. TV censors and the aftermath. When Bullitt finally made its way to TV, the network had a dilemma. The chase scene, especially that 10-second crash, was too intense for primetime audiences. There was no blood, no bodies, but the realism was overwhelming. Censors demanded cuts. Some versions toned it down by trimming the moment of impact, softening the most jarring hit. Others cut away just before the Charger hits the gas station. The goal was to reduce the shock factor while keeping the flow. Still, even the edited versions packed more punch than most action scenes airing at the time. Despite the edits, the film's influence spread fast. Directors like William Friedkin, who later shot The French Connection, credited Bullitt for changing the rules. The idea that a chase didn't need music, that the camera could shake, that a crash could happen by mistake and still belong in the film, that all started here. Film schools began using the Bullitt chase to teach tension, realism, and momentum. Editors studied the pacing, stunt coordinators rewound the crash over and over, and fans, especially gearheads, obsessed over the cars. People wanted to know everything. Where were the Mustangs now? What kind of camera was used? Who actually filmed the crash? For years, the details were passed around like folklore. McQueen's involvement only added to the myth, and that 10-second crash? It became its own legend. Directors cited it. Magazines dissected it. It made accidental perfection a filmmaking goal. In modern interviews, surviving crew members still talk about it with disbelief, that it even got captured, that no one was hurt, that the studio didn't make them reshoot. It was lightning in a bottle. Even decades later, Bullitt holds up, not because of its plot, not because of its style, but because of that scene, because two cars on real streets, filmed with minimal tricks, created a thrill that's never really been topped. And it all changed with one mistake, one loud hit, and 10 perfect seconds caught on film. Behind the glamour of old Hollywood was a hotbed of scandal. Think love triangles, blackmail, and rumors so wild they'd make Twitter explode today. The Clark Gable and Loretta Young love child scandal. One of the most whispered about was the rumor that Clark Gable fathered a secret child with Loretta Young. The year was 1935, and the two were co-stars in The Call of the Wild. Off-camera, it was said sparks flew. Gable, married to socialite Rhea Langham, had a reputation for on-set flings. Loretta Young, on the other hand, was known for her strict Catholic faith and carefully curated image of innocence. After filming Wrapped, Young disappeared from the spotlight. Months later, she returned, announcing she had adopted a baby girl named Judy. Her story was that Judy was an orphan who needed a home, but Judy's striking resemblance to Gable, right down to his distinctive ears, made the cover story hard to believe. Whispers of an affair and a secret pregnancy circulated immediately. Both stars stayed quiet. Gable, often referred to as the King of Hollywood, never publicly addressed the rumors. Young stuck to her adoption claim, protecting her career and reputation. Insiders, however, hinted that Gable made secret visits to Judy, further fueling the speculation. MGM reportedly stepped in to bury the story, fearful of how it might damage its stars. For nearly 6 decades, the truth remained hidden. It wasn't until 1994 that Young, in a rare interview, confirmed what many had long suspected. Judy was her biological daughter, the result of what she described as a non-consensual encounter with Gable during the filming of The Call of the Wild. This shocking revelation cast the scandal in a far darker light, reframing what had been romanticized as an affair into a story of exploitation. The confession added complexity to both Gable and Young's public personas. For Judy, it ended a lifetime of rumors, but also exposed the darker side of old Hollywood. Joan Crawford's alleged blue movies. Her career was the definition of Hollywood success, but behind her polished image, whispers of a scandal threatened to tarnish her legacy. By the 1930s, Crawford was one of MGM's brightest stars. However, rumors suggested her rise to fame had a darker backstory. The claims that before her Hollywood breakthrough, she'd appeared in adult films to make ends meet. These films, often called stag films, were part of an underground scene in the 1920s. Crawford, known then as Lucille LeSueur, was said to have participated in these productions during her early days as a struggling dancer. Fans found her swift transformation into a Hollywood star suspicious, speculating that someone powerful had helped her bury her past. Eddie Mannix, MGM's infamous fixer, was often linked to these rumors. Mannix was the studio's go-to guy for cleaning up messes and protecting its stars. Allegedly, he stepped in to handle the Crawford situation, tracking down and destroying any negatives of the supposed films. MGM was known for its obsession with controlling the public image of its stars, so the idea isn't far-fetched. Still, no concrete proof of Mannix's involvement, or the films themselves, has ever surfaced. Crawford, for her part, denied the allegations her entire life. She called the rumors malicious lies meant to drag her down. Decades later, her adopted daughter Christina reignited public interest in Crawford's private life with her controversial book, Mommy Dearest. While the memoir didn't address the adult film rumors directly, its shocking portrayal of Crawford added fuel to the fire about her hidden past. Despite the intrigue, no evidence has ever confirmed the existence of these alleged films. Were they a smear tactic against a powerful woman in Hollywood, or was there some truth to the whispers? We may never know. But the rumors have ensured that Crawford's name remains as infamous as it is iconic, proving that Hollywood's obsession with scandal knows no bounds. Errol Flynns' espionage allegations. He was the ultimate Hollywood swashbuckler, famous for his charisma and swordplay. But during World War II, a darker story started to circulate. Flynn, the man behind Robin Hood's smile, was rumored to be a Nazi spy. As wild as it sounded, the FBI took these whispers seriously and kept an active file on him. The allegations weren't baseless. Flynn had a close friendship with Hermann Urban, an Austrian doctor with confirmed Nazi ties. The two shared a love of travel, but Urban's documented connections to German intelligence raised alarms. Flynn's frequent trips to Europe during the war didn't help his case. Add to that his Austrian roots and his perceived indifference to the Allied cause, and the rumors began to stick. The conspiracy gained momentum in 1980, thanks to Charles Hyam's book Errol Flynn, The Untold Story. Hyam painted Flynn as a double agent, claiming the actor passed information to the Nazis while maintaining his Hollywood image. The book alleged Flynn's charm and international lifestyle made him the perfect spy. It also accused Flynn of using his Hollywood clout to help Urban and other Nazi sympathizers. But Hyam's claims were heavily criticized. Historians and Flynn supporters argued the evidence was flimsy and speculative. The FBI's files, while extensive, lacked any smoking gun. Flynn's defenders labeled Hyam's book a hit piece, accusing the author of exaggerating for shock value. Many believe the rumors were fueled by Flynn's reckless lifestyle rather than actual treachery. Despite the pushback, the damage was done. The mere suggestion of espionage left a stain on Flynn's legacy. Even today, the idea of Hollywood's most dashing hero harboring Nazi sympathies remains a tantalizing what if. So what's the truth? Was Flynn just an adventure junkie with bad judgment in friends, or did his charm mask something far more sinister? The lack of definitive evidence keeps the mystery alive, leaving fans and critics to debate whether Flynn's greatest act was on-screen or off. Marilyn Monroe's mysterious diaries. Her death in 1962 left behind more questions than answers. One of the most persistent rumors revolves around her alleged secret diaries. These journals supposedly contained shocking details about her relationships with John F. Kennedy and his brother Robert. For decades, these rumored diaries have fueled conspiracy theories and added to the intrigue surrounding Monroe's life and death. Monroe was known for keeping journals. She used them to write poetry, reflect on her life, and document personal experiences. Biographer Anthony Summers, in his book Goddess: The Secret Lives of Marilyn Monroe, suggested she recorded sensitive details from conversations with the Kennedys. Allegedly, some entries included political secrets and information that could have made her a liability. The circumstances of Monroe's death have only added to the speculation. Found lifeless in her Brentwood home, she was officially ruled a victim of a barbiturate overdose. However, the involvement of the FBI and LAPD in the investigation raised eyebrows. Rumors claim Monroe's house was searched extensively, and anything incriminating, like the alleged diaries, was quietly removed. Some close to Monroe, including her friends, insisted they had seen her write about her encounters with powerful men, adding fuel to the fire. Despite decades of speculation, no one has ever found these diaries. Some believe they were destroyed to protect the reputations of high-profile figures. Others argue the diaries never existed, suggesting they were invented by the media to sensationalize her tragic story. The lack of evidence hasn't stopped books, documentaries, and theorists from speculating about what they might have contained. Charles Chaplin's paternity battle. Charles Chaplin may have revolutionized film, but his personal life was often front-page news. By the 1940s, Chaplin was already a magnet for controversy, and the 1943 paternity suit filed by Joan Barry added fuel to the fire. Barry, a 22-year-old aspiring actress, claimed Chaplin was the father of her daughter, Carol Ann. The case quickly became a media frenzy, overshadowing Chaplin's cinematic brilliance. Barry's relationship with Chaplin had ended before her pregnancy, and he firmly denied fathering her child. He pointed to Barry's erratic behavior, stalking him, breaking into his home, as evidence of her instability. Still, her claims gained momentum, and the case went to court. In a bid to prove his innocence, Chaplin agreed to a blood test. At the time, this was cutting-edge science. The results were clear. Chaplin was not the biological father. But there was a catch. Under California law, blood tests were inadmissible in paternity cases. The jury ruled against Chaplin, ordering him to pay child support. The verdict caused public outrage, with many questioning the fairness of the decision. The scandal didn't stop in the courtroom. It gave Chaplin's enemies, including FBI Director J. Edgar Hoover, exactly what they needed to intensify their attacks. Hoover, who was already suspicious of Chaplin's political leanings, used the trial to paint him as both immoral and un-American. The FBI's campaign against Chaplin wasn't subtle. It added pressure to an already tense situation, leading to his forced departure from the U.S. in 1952. He relocated to Switzerland, where he spent the rest of his life. Despite the controversy, Chaplin continued making groundbreaking films, though the paternity case cast a long shadow over his later years. Judy Garland's alleged drug coercion. Judy's talent lit up the screen, but her life behind the scenes told a darker story. Her career, especially during her teenage years, has been heavily scrutinized for the alleged exploitation she endured under MGM's iron grip. Many believe the studio orchestrated her dependency on drugs to keep her working at an unrelenting pace. Garland was just 13 when she signed with MGM. While her voice was unmatched, executives cruelly criticized her appearance, labeling her the Little Hunchback. To fit Hollywood's rigid standards, she was subjected to harsh dietary controls. Reports suggest her meals consisted of black coffee, chicken soup, and diet pills, all closely monitored by studio staff. The most shocking claims involve amphetamines, pep pills, allegedly given to Garland to keep her energized for marathon filming schedules. During The Wizard of Oz, she was said to work up to 18-hour days, running on little more than these stimulants. To help her sleep, barbiturates were reportedly prescribed, creating a dangerous cycle of dependency. By adulthood, Garland's struggles with addiction were undeniable. Her personal life and career began to show the strain. She often spoke candidly about her experience with the studio system, saying, "They had us working days and nights on end. They'd give us pills to keep us on our feet long after we were exhausted, then knock us out with sleeping pills when the work was done." Her battles didn't stop there. She faced public breakdowns, hospitalizations, and strained relationships. Despite these challenges, her raw talent and resilience kept her fighting for her place in Hollywood. Garland's tragic death in 1969, at just 47 years old, was attributed to an overdose. It was a heartbreaking end for a star who had given so much to the industry but received so little care in return. Her story remains a grim reminder of how old Hollywood often treated its stars as commodities rather than people, prioritizing profit over well-being. Judy Garland will always be remembered for her brilliance, but her struggles highlight the darker side of fame in the industry's golden era. The murder mystery of Thelma Todd. Her death in December 1935 stunned Hollywood. Known as the Ice Cream Blonde, she was beloved for her comedic timing and glamorous looks. At 29, Todd was a star on the rise, transitioning from silent films to talkies with ease. She also ran Thelma Todd's Sidewalk Cafe, a hot spot for celebrities along the Pacific Coast Highway, but her success was overshadowed by her mysterious death, which has remained unsolved. Todd's body was found slumped in her car inside the garage of her lover and business partner, Roland West. The garage, located above her cafe, became the center of intense speculation. The coroner ruled her death accidental, caused by carbon monoxide poisoning from her car's running engine. Still, the details surrounding her death didn't add up, sparking rumors that refused to die. Weeks before her death, Todd allegedly received threats from mobsters demanding money from her cafe. Organized crime figures saw her business as prime real estate for their operations. Her refusal to comply may have put her in danger. Adding fuel to the fire, Todd was seen arguing at a party the night before with her ex-husband, Pat DeSico, who had known mob connections. Then there was Roland West. West's controlling behavior and rocky relationship with Todd made him another prime suspect in the public's eyes. Some believed West locked her in the garage after an argument, not realizing the car was still running. West's shifting accounts of that night only deepened the suspicion. The coroner's report didn't help matters. It mentioned minor bruises on Todd's face and body, leading to speculation about a possible struggle. Yet there were no clear signs of foul play, leaving investigators without solid evidence. Despite the public outcry, the case was closed as an accidental death. Thelma Todd's story is still a favorite among true crime buffs. Was it a tragic accident? A mob hit? A lover's quarrel gone horribly wrong? The truth remains elusive, ensuring her death remains one of Hollywood's most talked-about mysteries. Rock Hudson's hidden truth. He had it all: looks, charm, and a career most actors could only dream of. He became Hollywood's go-to leading man in the 1950s, starring in romantic hits that solidified his image as the ultimate symbol of masculinity. Fans loved him, studios relied on him, and his name alone could sell out theaters. But behind the perfectly polished exterior was a secret that Hollywood worked overtime to keep hidden. Rumors about Hudson's sexuality began circulating early in his career. Back then, even a hint of being gay could end a star's career. Hudson's agent, Henry Wilson, was infamous for covering up scandals and managing his clients' images with ruthless efficiency. When whispers about Hudson started growing louder, Wilson orchestrated a hasty solution: a marriage. In 1955, Hudson married Phyllis Gates, Wilson's secretary. The timing wasn't subtle. It came right after a tabloid threatened to publish a story about Hudson's personal life. Gates later claimed she didn't know Hudson was gay when they married, but skeptics have doubted her version of events. The marriage lasted 3 years, but by then it had served its purpose: silencing the rumors. Behind closed doors, Hudson lived a carefully compartmentalized life. Close friends and co-stars knew the truth, but loyalty and fear of the industry's backlash kept them quiet. Studio executives wielded immense power and had no problem squashing tabloid stories that could tarnish their golden boy. Everything changed in 1985 when Hudson announced he had immune deficiency syndrome. He was the first major celebrity to publicly disclose the diagnosis, a move that shocked fans and confirmed the rumors. The revelation came at a time when advanced HIV disease was deeply stigmatized, and Hudson's bravery helped bring global attention to the crisis. His death later that year was mourned worldwide and exposed the hypocrisy of an industry that demanded perfection at any cost. Lana Turner and the Johnny Stompinado murder. Lana Turner's relationship with Johnny Stompinado had everything tabloids could dream of: a Hollywood icon, a mobster boyfriend, and an explosive ending. Stompinado, a known associate of crime boss Mickey Cohen, wasn't just bad news. He was dangerous. Despite his charm, his violent streak quickly turned their romance into a toxic mess of arguments and reconciliations. By 1958, the relationship had reached its breaking point. On April 4th, an argument in Turner's Beverly Hills home escalated to violence. Turner later testified that Stompinado threatened her, causing her 14-year-old daughter, Cheryl Crane, to step in. Grabbing a kitchen knife, Cheryl stabbed him in the abdomen. He died almost instantly. The fallout was chaotic. The media swarmed Turner's home, turning the incident into a nationwide scandal. Headlines screamed speculation about what really happened that night. At the coroner's inquest, Cheryl claimed she acted in self-defense to protect her mother. Turner backed her up, tearfully recounting the abuse she'd endured. The jury ruled it justifiable homicide, but whispers of a different story refused to die. Some questioned whether Cheryl, a teenager with no history of violence, could deliver such a precise fatal wound. Others believed Turner herself had wielded the knife and that Cheryl took the blame to save her mother's career. Stompinado's mob connections added another layer of intrigue. There were rumors that his death wasn't an accident at all. Some suggested Mickey Cohen had orchestrated the killing either to eliminate liability or settle a personal grudge. Cohen, of course, denied any involvement. Despite the jury's decision, the scandal haunted Turner. While she continued acting, her glamorous image was forever tied to the tragedy. Cheryl, too, struggled with the weight of public scrutiny. The case remains one of old Hollywood's most infamous stories, blending celebrity drama with true crime. Whether it was a desperate act of protection or a cover-up, the Stompinado murder still fuels endless speculation. Decades later, it's clear this was no ordinary Hollywood breakup. It was a headline-grabbing scandal that left scars on everyone involved. The Black Dalia and Hollywood. The murder of Elizabeth Short, better known as the Black Dalia, remains one of Hollywood's darkest mysteries. In January 1947, her mutilated body was found in a vacant Los Angeles lot. The crime was horrifying and left posed in a gruesome manner. The case immediately grabbed headlines, with every sordid detail plastered across newspapers. Short, just 22 years old, had come to LA chasing dreams of becoming an actress. Like many others, she struggled to find work, often relying on friends or admirers for support. When her murder hit the news, her personal life became fodder for speculation. Reporters and the public alike were eager to link her to Hollywood's elite. Rumors swirled that she had attended exclusive parties thrown by powerful industry figures. Some even suggested she had rejected the wrong man's advances, which led to her untimely death. One theory that refuses to die is the involvement of Dr. George Hodel, a prominent and wealthy physician. Hodel was known for hosting extravagant gatherings attended by artists, intellectuals, and Hollywood insiders. Decades later, his own son, Steve Hodel, a former LAPD detective, accused him of being the killer. Steve presented evidence, including old photos of a woman resembling Short and his father's medical expertise, which matched the surgical precision of the crime. The accusations against George Hodel didn't come out of nowhere. During the 1940s, he was investigated for other crimes, including the suspicious death of his secretary. Although Hodel was never charged in the Black Dalia case, his connection to it has fueled endless speculation. Elizabeth Short's murder remains unsolved, but her name is forever tied to the shadowy side of Hollywood. Whether she was targeted for her ambitions, a chance encounter, or something more sinister, the crime highlighted the dangers lurking in the industry. Some of the old-time Hollywood celebrities were into stuff you wouldn't believe, from having weird obsessions with scat
It is Austin.
to something as bizarre as an irrational fear for the color purple. There is no denying the fact that most of what you're about to be exposed to make absolutely no sense. Charles Lawton's weird diet. In his memoir, Full Service, My Adventures in Hollywood and the Sex Lives of the Stars, Scotty Bowers claims to have either slept with or arranged sexual liaisons for hundreds of the best-known celebrities during Hollywood's golden age. One of the most shocking stories involves British actor Charles Lton. But that's not all. According to Bowers, Lton once asked him to bring over a young male guest while his wife was out. When Bowers and the young man arrived, Lton began making a sandwich. He carefully sliced up lettuce and tomatoes, arranged them on sourdough bread, added a bit of lemon juice, and sprinkled some salt and pepper. This is where it gets interesting. After a few minutes of prep work, Lton took the bread slices in one hand, picked up a pot with the other, and asked the young man to follow him into the bathroom. But what happened next will shock you. Here's what Bowers describes. Charles was the first to return. He put the plate with the bread slices on the kitchen table. I could see that the lettuce and tomatoes had been lightly smeared with a light brown substance. Seconds later, Ted appeared in the kitchen. His erection was gone, and he was looking decidedly sheepish, perhaps even a trifle embarrassed. I stared at him curiously, and he pulled a face, hoping that Charles wouldn't notice. He pointed at the bread slices on the plate and then lightly patted his backside. And then, believe it or not, Lton ate the sandwich. Ronald Reagan's obsession with young virgins. Ronald Reagan is often remembered more for his political career than his time in Hollywood, but back in the 1940s and 50s he was one of Tinseltown's leading men. But that's not all. One of the most cringe-inducing rumors about Reagan's Hollywood days comes from his co-star in the 1950 drama Louisa, Piper Laurie. She claims that the future GOP icon took her virginity when he was 39 years old, and she was just 18. But what happened next will shock you. In her memoir, Laurie writes that Reagan first seduced her on the set of their film Louisa, where he played her father. At first, Reagan seemed like a true gentleman. He even asked Laurie's mother for permission to take her on a date. Sounds charming, right? But instead of the glamorous evening Laurie had imagined, Reagan took both her and her mother to his house, where he cooked hamburger steak and salad. This is where it gets interesting. After dinner, things took a strange turn. Reagan led Laurie back to the bedroom. According to her, the actor was an insensitive show-off in bed. He bragged about how long he'd been erect, 40 whole minutes, and how much his condom had cost. But that's not all. Laurie also recounts that Reagan was far from a considerate lover. Not only did he fail to pleasure her, but when she mentioned her lack of an orgasm, his response was harsh and critical. According to her, he said, "There's something wrong with you that you should fix." Howard Hughes's extreme obsession with hygiene. Howard Hughes, the brilliant yet enigmatic tycoon, had a mind that worked in extraordinary ways. His achievements in aviation, film, and business were nothing short of legendary. But alongside his brilliance, there was a peculiar and relentless obsession that dominated his life: cleanliness. Imagine a man so consumed by the fear of germs that he would lock himself away in dark rooms for days, sometimes even weeks. Hughes turned his lavish homes into fortresses of solitude, meticulously sealed to keep out any potential contamination. The windows were often covered, creating a gloomy, almost eerie atmosphere, as if he were living in a perpetual twilight. Hughes's hand-washing routine was nothing short of ritualistic. Picture this. He would wash his hands repeatedly, scrubbing them until they were raw and sometimes even bleeding. It wasn't just a quick rinse, it was a painstaking process, as if he were trying to scrub away invisible threats. His fear of germs was so intense that he believed even the slightest contact could lead to illness or infection. But Hughes's obsession didn't stop at hand washing. He went to extraordinary lengths to avoid human contact altogether. For instance, if he had to meet someone, he would often communicate through notes or intercom systems, avoiding face-to-face interactions. He would use tissues to touch objects and had a meticulous system for handling everyday items to ensure they remained uncontaminated. Hughes's peculiarities extended to his instructions to staff and associates. He once demanded that all canned food be meticulously washed and scrubbed before opening. Imagine the bewilderment of his staff as they followed these bizarre instructions, knowing that any deviation could trigger one of Hughes's infamous outbursts. Even when he was flying, Hughes couldn't escape his fears. His custom-built planes were designed with his germophobia in mind. He often flew alone or with minimal crew, ensuring that the aircraft remained as sterile as possible. The irony of an aviation pioneer afraid of the very air he conquered is striking, isn't it? Hughes's obsession with cleanliness and germs was a constant battle in his mind. Despite his towering intellect and achievements, he was trapped by his own fears. This relentless battle between his rational, inventive side and his irrational, obsessive side created a fascinating yet tragic figure. The man who soared to great heights in both the literal and metaphorical sense was, in many ways, grounded by his own mind. Mae West's astrology obsession. Mae West, a name synonymous with boldness and wit, was a star who dazzled both on and off the screen. But behind her larger-than-life persona and sultry quips lay a fascination that guided many of her choices. Astrology. Mae West was deeply obsessed with astrology. This wasn't just a casual interest or a passing fancy, it was a central pillar of her decision-making process. Imagine a woman who, despite her confidence and unshakable self-assuredness, would not make any major life decisions without first consulting her astrologer. Whether it was a career move, a personal relationship, or even the timing of her day-to-day activities, the stars had to align for Mae. Her belief in astrology was so profound that it influenced her creative work. She wrote a play called The Constant Sinner, which was steeped in astrological themes. The narrative wasn't just a backdrop for her characters. It was interwoven with the celestial movements and zodiac signs that Mae believed so deeply in. This wasn't just art imitating life. It was life, love, and destiny dictated by the cosmos. Think about the confidence and assertiveness Mae West exuded in every role she played and every public appearance she made. Now imagine that same woman, with all her bravado, quietly consulting her astrologer in private, seeking guidance from the alignment of planets and stars. It's a striking contrast, isn't it? The idea that such a powerful figure would defer to celestial charts and predictions adds a fascinating layer to her already complex persona. Astrology wasn't just a hobby for Mae West, it was a way of life. She saw the patterns and signs as a roadmap, helping her navigate the tumultuous landscape of Hollywood and her personal life. This deep-rooted belief in the stars provided her with a sense of control and direction, a way to make sense of the often unpredictable nature of fame and fortune. Marlene Dietrich and collecting men's clothes. Beyond her screen persona, Marlene had an intriguing obsession that set her apart from her contemporaries, a fascination with men's clothing. This wasn't just a passing fancy or a quirky interest. It was a profound passion that influenced both her personal life and her public image. Dietrich didn't merely collect men's clothing, she wore it with a sense of ease and confidence that challenged the norms of her time. In an era when women were expected to adhere to strict fashion conventions, Dietrich's choice to don suits, trousers, and tailored shirts was nothing short of revolutionary. Picture her walking into a Hollywood event in a perfectly fitted tuxedo, her hair meticulously styled, and her makeup flawless. The image was striking and unforgettable, making a powerful statement about gender and fashion. She was one of the first women to popularize androgynous fashion in Hollywood. Her style wasn't about rejecting femininity, but about embracing a broader spectrum of identity. By wearing men's clothing, Dietrich played with societal expectations, blending masculinity and femininity in a way that was both provocative and liberating. She made it clear that clothing was an expression of self, not a strict adherence to gender norms. Dietrich's fascination with men's clothing went beyond the surface. She appreciated the craftsmanship, the structure, and the way these garments allowed her to move and present herself. Collecting these pieces became a hobby, a form of self-expression, and a way to assert her individuality. Imagine her private wardrobe, filled with an array of perfectly tailored suits, each piece carefully chosen and cherished. Her influence extended far beyond her personal collection. Dietrich's androgynous style inspired countless designers and fashion enthusiasts, paving the way for future generations to explore and embrace non-traditional fashion choices. She wasn't just a style icon. She was a pioneer who challenged the fashion industry's rigid boundaries. Peter Sellers' obsession against the color purple. Most people have typical fears like heights, snakes, or spiders, but Peter Sellers, he had a bizarre terror of the color purple. Now, Sellers' eccentricity wasn't the lovable, bumbling kind he often portrayed in his roles. It was far more chaotic and disturbing, making him a difficult person to be around. On film sets, Sellers was infamous for his explosive outbursts. Imagine him in a fit of rage, yelling at his wives, smashing dishes, and even brandishing a shotgun to vent his anger. His tantrums didn't stop there. He clashed with directors and producers, despite their higher status, and would often get lower-level staff fired if they crossed him. His erratic behavior was compounded by his vague racism and intense superstitions. One superstition in particular involved the famed director Vittorio De Sica. While they were working on After the Fox, Sellers saw De Sica berate a script girl for wearing purple. The director ominously declared that purple was the color of death. This statement profoundly impacted Sellers, who became convinced that the color purple could kill. From then on, Sellers' fear of purple dominated his actions. Any time he encountered the color, he'd fly into a panic, throwing tantrums and insisting it be removed. This irrational fear added yet another layer of unpredictability to an already volatile personality, making life around him a constant challenge. Charlie Chaplin's obsession with younger women. Charlie Chaplin, the legendary actor, filmmaker, and comedian, known for his iconic character, the Little Tramp, also had a much darker side to his personal life. Beyond the silver screen, Chaplin's relationships were the subject of much controversy, largely due to his well-known obsession with very young women. This fixation shaped his personal and professional life in ways that continue to spark debate. Chaplin's first marriage was to Mildred Harris in 1918, when he was 29 and she was just 16. Their relationship began when Harris was only 15, highlighting the significant age difference and Chaplin's preference for much younger partners. The marriage was short-lived, lasting only 2 years, but it set a precedent for Chaplin's future romantic endeavors. Following his divorce from Harris, Chaplin embarked on a series of relationships with teenage girls. His second marriage was to Lita Gray, who was 16 when they started their relationship and 18 when they married in 1924. Chaplin was 35 at the time. Their union was fraught with difficulties from the start. Gray's youth and inexperience clashed with Chaplin's controlling nature, leading to a tumultuous relationship that ended in a highly publicized and acrimonious divorce. The divorce proceedings revealed many sordid details about Chaplin's behavior, further cementing his controversial reputation. Despite the scandal, Chaplin continued to pursue young women. His third marriage was to Paulette Goddard, a rising star in Hollywood, who was 21 when they met, and Chaplin was 47. Though their marriage was kept relatively private and the age gap was not as stark as in his previous relationships, the pattern of significant age differences persisted. Chaplin's fourth and final marriage was to Una O'Neill, the daughter of playwright Eugene O'Neill, Una was just 18 when she married Chaplin, who was 54 at the time. This marriage, despite the age gap, proved to be the most stable and enduring of Chaplin's life. They remained together until Chaplin's death in 1977, and they had 8 children. Una's unwavering support and devotion seemed to bring Chaplin a semblance of the stability that had eluded him in his previous relationships. His preference for young women was not limited to his marriages. He was known to have numerous relationships with teenage girls throughout his life, often starting when the girls were still minors. This behavior, while not uncommon in the early 20th century, drew significant criticism and legal challenges. In one notable case, Chaplin faced a paternity suit from actress Joan Barry, who was 23 years younger than him. The case, which included allegations of coercion and manipulation, was widely covered by the media and further tarnished Chaplin's public image. The controversy surrounding Chaplin's relationships with young women has led to a complex legacy. On one hand, he is celebrated as a genius of early cinema, whose contributions to film and comedy are unparalleled. On the other hand, his personal life raises uncomfortable questions about the dynamics of power and exploitation. Chaplin's behavior reflects the broader societal attitudes of his time, where older men often pursued younger women, sometimes with dire consequences. Gloria Swanson's obsession with health and fasting. Gloria Swanson, one of Hollywood's most glamorous and enduring stars, was not only known for her striking beauty and acting prowess, but also for her intense dedication to health foods and fasting. Decades before the wellness industry became mainstream, Swanson was a pioneer in the realm of health and nutrition, turning her lifestyle into a fervent obsession that shaped her daily routines and public persona. Swanson's journey into the world of health foods and fasting began at a time when processed foods were becoming increasingly popular in America. Rejecting this trend, she delved into natural and organic eating habits, believing that what she consumed had a direct impact on her overall well-being and longevity. Her approach to diet was meticulous and uncompromising. She scrutinized every ingredient, ensuring that her meals were not only nutritious but also free from any artificial additives or preservatives. Her commitment to healthy foods extended beyond just eating organic produce. Swanson embraced a diet rich in raw vegetables, fruits, nuts, and seeds, long before such dietary choices became fashionable. She was particularly fond of juicing, often preparing fresh vegetable and fruit juices to maintain her energy and vitality. This dedication to a clean diet was not merely a fad for Swanson. It was a deeply ingrained lifestyle choice that she believed was essential for sustaining her health and beauty. In addition to her strict dietary habits, Swanson was a firm believer in the benefits of fasting. She would often embark on long fasts, abstaining from food for extended periods to cleanse her body and mind. These fasts were not just about physical health. Swanson saw them as a way to achieve mental clarity and spiritual renewal. Her fasting routines were rigorous, sometimes lasting several days, during which she would consume only water or freshly squeezed juices. This practice was unconventional and even controversial at the time, but Swanson was unwavering in her belief in its benefits. Swanson's obsession with health foods and fasting was also evident in her social interactions and public appearances. She often spoke about her dietary practices, sharing her knowledge and experiences with others. She became an advocate for healthy living, encouraging those around her to adopt similar habits. Her influence extended to her close circle of friends and colleagues in Hollywood, many of whom were inspired by her dedication and began to explore healthier lifestyles themselves. Her commitment to health was not without its challenges. Swanson faced skepticism and criticism from those who viewed her practices as extreme or unnecessary. However, she remained steadfast, confident in the knowledge that her choices were beneficial. Her dedication to health and wellness was a testament to her discipline and determination, qualities that also defined her illustrious career. Swanson's approach to health was holistic. She believed in the interconnectedness of physical, mental, and emotional well-being. This belief guided her lifestyle choices, from her diet and fasting routines to her emphasis on regular exercise and stress management. She practiced yoga and meditation, long before these practices became popular in the West, as part of her daily regimen to maintain balance and harmony in her life. Her obsession with health foods and fasting also influenced her work. Swanson often took on roles that reflected her personal beliefs, portraying characters who embodied strength, resilience, and a sense of well-being. Her off-screen persona, as a health-conscious and disciplined individual, became an integral part of her public image, distinguishing her from many of her contemporaries. Hollywood's golden age wasn't so golden. Imagine your favorite star caked in week-old sweat, reusing unwashed costumes and dodging rats on set. This wasn't the exception, it was the norm. Glamour outside, filth behind. In the silent film era, Hollywood was all about speed, hygiene and safety, barely on the radar. Sets were cobbled together with reused materials, and cleanliness wasn't a priority. This chaos turned film productions into playgrounds for rats and cockroaches. These pests weren't just unwelcome, they were practically part of the crew, darting through props like they owned the place. Costumes didn't fare much better. Studios treated wardrobes like communal hand-me-downs. Cleaning them wasn't a priority. Iconic stars like Mary Pickford and Douglas Fairbanks wore outfits that had been through multiple productions. Sweat and grime built up over time, and spot cleaning was often the best anyone could do. Under those hot stage lights, actors had no choice but to grin and bear it, literally. Makeup was another nightmare. Personal makeup kits weren't a thing yet. Everyone shared the same jars of foundation, powders, and brushes, which were rarely cleaned. Bacteria spread easily, leading to breakouts, eye infections, and irritated skin. Even stars like Greta Garbo couldn't escape these side effects. Studios provided cheap, unsanitary products, leaving actors to deal with the consequences. Sets weren't any cleaner. Outdoor shoots were often in remote locations with no running water or proper restrooms. Indoor stages were worse, poorly ventilated and stifling under harsh lights, which encouraged mold growth. Productions involving animals added another layer of filth, as their waste was rarely cleaned up promptly. Actors had no room to complain. Studio heads like Louis B. Mayer and Carl Laemmle were more concerned with meeting deadlines than health concerns. Complaints could cost you your career. The show must go on wasn't motivational. It was a thinly veiled threat. By the late 1920s, the transition to sound brought minor improvements, but sanitation was still low on the list of priorities. The glamorous image of silent films hid a much dirtier reality, proving early Hollywood's charm had a decidedly grimy side: costume nightmares and shared wardrobes. Costumes in the 1930s and 1940s were the heart of Hollywood's magic. Stunning gowns, sharp suits, and intricate period outfits brought movies to life. But behind the scenes, wardrobe maintenance was a hygiene disaster. Studios saw costumes as investments, reusing them relentlessly with little thought to cleanliness. Even the biggest stars weren't spared. Joan Crawford and Bette Davis, icons of their time, often wore spot-cleaned outfits drenched in sweat from intense stage lights. Washing delicate fabrics like silk or sequins was considered too risky. Instead, costumes were steamed and sprayed with perfume to mask odors. This quick fix didn't remove bacteria, leaving actors stuck in musty, uncomfortable clothing. Extras had it worse. Historical epics like Gone with the Wind, 1939, required layers of elaborate costumes, corsets, petticoats, and military uniforms. These pieces were shared across productions and rarely cleaned. During Gone with the Wind, many extras suffered rashes and itching from unwashed undergarments. Studios brushed off complaints, showing how little they cared for the comfort of lower-tier workers. Animal costumes and furs were another nightmare. Popular in historical and fantasy films, they soaked up sweat and grime during long shoots. Washing them wasn't an option without ruining the material, so they turned into breeding grounds for bacteria. Actors wearing these costumes often described the smell as unbearable. Studios predictably ignored the complaints. Some stars fought back. Claudette Colbert, while filming It Happened One Night, 1934, refused to wear shared undergarments. She demanded freshly made items and used her star power to secure better treatment. Unfortunately, most actors, especially extras, lacked the clout to push for change. The lack of hygiene in costume departments was an open secret. For decades, glamorous outfits on screen hid the uncomfortable reality faced by those who wore them. It wasn't until unions began advocating for higher standards in the mid-20th century that real improvements were made. Until then, Hollywood magic came with a heavy and dirty price: makeup, mercury, and the health risks. Makeup in old Hollywood was both a blessing and a curse. It created the iconic looks that defined the era, but came with serious risks. Toxic ingredients and poor hygiene made it a health hazard for actors. The use of dangerous ingredients like lead and mercury was common. Lon Chaney, known for his roles in silent horror films like The Phantom of the Opera, 1925, relied on white face paint packed with lead. It gave him the ghostly look he needed but caused severe skin problems. Over time, the damage was permanent. Chaney, like most actors, accepted this as part of the job. Makeup tools were another issue. Brushes and sponges were shared without cleaning, making infections inevitable. Jean Harlow, the blonde bombshell of the 1930s, developed an eye infection during Dinner at 8, 1933, thanks to contaminated tools. Extras had it worse. They often used leftover products from the stars with zero regard for hygiene. One of the most shocking cases was Buddy Ebsen, cast as the Tin Man in The Wizard of Oz, 1939. His aluminum-based makeup caused severe respiratory issues, forcing him to leave the role. Instead of addressing the safety concerns, the studio simply replaced him. Jack Haley, his replacement, was given a paste version of the makeup. While safer than powder, it still caused discomfort. The message was clear: actors were replaceable. Safety wasn't a priority. Speaking out was risky. Actors who complained were labeled difficult, which could end their careers. It wasn't until the mid-20th century that regulations began addressing these dangers. By then, many stars had already paid the price. The flawless faces of old Hollywood hid a harsh reality. Beneath the glamour was an industry willing to sacrifice its stars' health for perfection. Those shimmering eyes and perfect lips came at a far greater cost than audiences ever realized. Dark side of hair departments. Hair departments in old Hollywood had one goal: perfection. But behind the glamorous styles, hygiene and safety often took a back seat. Stylists worked tirelessly to transform actors, but their methods were far from clean. Shared tools were a constant problem. Combs, brushes, and curling irons were rarely sanitized even when used on dozens of actors. Head lice outbreaks were common, especially among extras in big productions. During Cleopatra, 1963, extras complained of itching and scalp irritation from reused wigs and hairpieces. Leading actors got slightly better treatment, but infections were still a risk. Chemical hair treatments were brutal. Actresses like Rita Hayworth endured intense processes to meet Hollywood's beauty standards. Hayworth's signature red hair required frequent bleaching, leaving her scalp raw and her hair brittle. She later admitted it was painful, but felt it was necessary to keep her career alive. Many actresses suffered in silence, knowing they had little choice. Wigs and hairpieces added to the misery. These were reused across productions with minimal cleaning. Judy Garland, while filming The Wizard of Oz, 1939, had to wear a tight wig cap to hide her natural hairline. It caused severe irritation, but her complaints were dismissed as trivial. Actors rarely had control over their hairstyles. Studios dictated every detail of their appearance. Refusing a treatment or style risked being labeled difficult, a career-ending accusation at the time. Change didn't come quickly. It wasn't until unions stepped in that hair departments began improving hygiene and safety. Before that, actors bore the brunt of unsafe practices, all in the name of looking flawless on screen. The iconic hairstyles of old Hollywood dazzled audiences, but they came at a cost. Beneath the perfectly coiffed waves and glamorous updos was an industry willing to sacrifice its stars' health for the sake of beauty, water woes, and bathing blues. In early Hollywood, basic hygiene was a luxury, especially during outdoor shoots. Clean water and proper facilities were often ignored in the rush to finish productions. Cast and crew endured uncomfortable and unsanitary conditions, though these hardships were rarely acknowledged publicly. One infamous example was the filming of Ben-Hur, 1925. Shot in the sweltering Italian desert, actors and extras spent days in heavy, unwashed costumes under relentless heat. With no proper bathing facilities, sweat and dirt built up quickly. Reports described extras developing severe rashes and infections from the combination of grime and tight garments. The studio's focus stayed on the epic chariot race scenes, offering little support to those suffering on set. Water scenes were no better. During the Ten Commandments, 1923, extras stood for hours in stagnant pools to simulate Moses parting the Red Sea. The water, filled with bacteria, led to skin infections and other health problems. Studios brushed off complaints, prioritizing dramatic visuals over worker safety. With no access to showers, actors and crew improvised. Perfumes and powders became survival tools, especially for actresses expected to look glamorous at all times. Carole Lombard, a 1930s star, was known to carry scented powders in her bag to combat the effects of long, sweaty days. Unfortunately, these quick fixes barely masked the discomfort. The lack of clean water wasn't just gross, it was dangerous. Illnesses spread rapidly on crowded sets, with stomach bugs and skin infections becoming routine. Studios rarely addressed these outbreaks, leaving workers to manage on their own. Even into the 1940s, hygiene on outdoor shoots remained an afterthought. Profit and efficiency always came first. It wasn't until unions fought for better standards that portable restrooms and water stations became standard. By then, countless actors and extras had already suffered for the sake of Hollywood's grand illusions. Plight of extras and background. Extras in early Hollywood had it rough. While stars enjoyed some level of comfort, background actors were treated as disposable. These workers were essential for grand spectacles like historical epics, but faced the harshest conditions. Hygiene standards? Non-existent. Studios didn't care about their well-being. Films like Quo Vadis 1951 and Ben-Hur 1959 relied on thousands of extras. These extras spent hours crammed into poorly ventilated holding areas, often without proper restrooms or water. On Ben-Hur, reports described extras collapsing from heat exhaustion. Heavy costumes, long hours, and scorching sun made it unbearable. The studio's response? Push through to stay on schedule. The set of Spartacus, 1960, wasn't any better. Extras endured grueling shifts under blazing lights with few breaks. Clean water? Rare. Meals? Sure, but no way to wash hands before eating. Food poisoning outbreaks were common. Complaints went ignored, as deadlines always came first. Then there was the Ten Commandments, 1956. Extras playing Israelites walked barefoot across burning desert sand. Burns and blisters were inevitable, but no relief was provided. When extras protested, they were told to keep working or leave. Studios made it clear. Extras were replaceable. The inequality didn't stop there. Wardrobe departments handed extras old, unwashed costumes, while stars received fresh, tailored outfits. Makeup and hairstyling were reserved for lead actors. Extras were left to fend for themselves, highlighting the stark divide between the stars and the background players. The public never saw these struggles. Studios carefully maintained Hollywood's glamorous image, ensuring the realities faced by extras stayed hidden. It wasn't until unions stepped in during the mid-20th century that conditions improved. Extras finally gained access to clean facilities, fair treatment, and basic protections. Despite their invisibility, extras were the backbone of Hollywood's biggest productions. They filled the screens and brought epic stories to life, often at great personal cost. Pest problems on set. Pests were an ongoing nightmare on early Hollywood sets. Studios spared no expense on elaborate sets and big-budget films, but skimped on cleanliness. Rats, cockroaches, and fleas thrived, turning sets into breeding grounds for discomfort and disease. Animal-heavy productions were the worst offenders. The Big Trail, 1930, with its many livestock scenes, faced constant sanitation issues. Horses and oxen left waste everywhere, attracting flies and rodents. Cleaning crews couldn't keep up, leaving cast and crew to endure the stench and pests. Actors often worked uncomfortably close to these unsanitary conditions. Mutiny on the Bounty, 1935, was another pest-filled production. Filmed on a replica ship, the set became overrun with rats. Actors joked about their furry co-stars, but the humor wore thin when the rodents began contaminating food supplies. Their constant scurrying made scenes difficult to film and added an extra layer of frustration to an already challenging shoot. Indoor sets weren't safe either. Studios like Warner Brothers often battled cockroach infestations, especially in wardrobe storage areas. Costumes, left hanging for months between productions, became pest hotels. More than one actor found an unwelcome critter in their clothes right before filming. Fleas were another issue, especially in historical epics. Wool costumes combined with animals created the perfect storm. Extras frequently complained of itching and flea bites with little sympathy from the studios. Addressing the problem wasn't a priority. As long as filming stayed on schedule, comfort didn't matter. These infestations revealed just how little studios cared about worker health and safety. The focus stayed firmly on production deadlines. Even when actors and crew raised concerns, pest control remained an afterthought. By the mid-20th century, unions pushed for better conditions, including regular pest control on sets. But for decades, countless cast and crew members had already suffered through the itching, scratching, and outright disgust caused by Hollywood's pest problems. All for the sake of movie magic. Celebrity hygiene habits exposed. Hollywood's golden era sold perfection. Stars were glamorous, untouchable, and seemingly flawless. But behind the scenes, their hygiene habits told a very different story. Studios worked overtime to hide these quirks, preserving the illusion of untarnished beauty. Take Clark Gable, for example. Known as one of Hollywood's greatest leading men, he had a not-so-charming secret: bad breath. The culprit? Poor dental hygiene and gum disease. During Gone with the Wind, 1939, Vivien Leigh reportedly dreaded kissing scenes with him and complained about it to the crew. Still, the studio brushed off the issue to keep Gable's heartthrob image intact. Marilyn Monroe, the epitome of beauty, had her own surprising habits. She often slept in her makeup, rarely taking it off after long days. This led to frequent breakouts, requiring makeup artists to work overtime to conceal blemishes before filming. Thanks to studio-backed beauty teams, her on-screen glow remained untouched by her off-screen routines. Charlie Chaplin, known for his genius, wasn't so keen on personal grooming. He was said to skip baths during busy shoots, focusing entirely on his work. While his behind-the-scenes habits were less than pristine, audiences never saw it. His lovable tramp character stayed as charming as ever. Even Greta Garbo, a symbol of elegance, dealt with hygiene struggles. Low-quality makeup products of the time worsened her skin problems. Combined with her aversion to strict skincare routines, it wasn't an easy fix. Studios provided her with exclusive treatments to keep her screen image flawless. These anecdotes reveal the gap between Hollywood's polished image and its stars' real lives. Studios controlled every detail of public perception, ensuring audiences saw only the glamour. While these habits might seem shocking now, they remind us that even old Hollywood's icons were human. Behind the glitz, they were just people with quirks and flaws. The carefully crafted mystique kept audiences in awe, never questioning the less glamorous truths. When standards began to change. By the 1950s and 1960s, Hollywood finally started cleaning up its act, literally. Decades of unsanitary practices tolerated in the name of profit were being challenged. Unions, advocacy groups, and a growing focus on worker rights pushed studios toward change. Progress was slow, but it was significant. One big shift came in makeup departments. Shared tools like brushes, sponges, and powder jars were replaced with personal makeup kits. Artists were required to sanitize their tools and create individualized kits for each actor. This simple change dramatically reduced the skin infections and eye irritations that had plagued stars for years. Wardrobe departments followed suit. Costumes were no longer treated as sacred relics. Studios began using fabrics that could withstand regular cleaning. Disposable undergarments became standard, sparing actors the awkwardness of sharing intimate garments. Stars like Audrey Hepburn and Elizabeth Taylor used their influence to demand these upgrades, helping set a new standard for hygiene. Set facilities also improved. Portable restrooms, clean water stations, and shaded rest areas became common on outdoor shoots. Productions like Lawrence of Arabia, 1962, filmed in remote deserts, took extra steps to ensure cast and crew had access to clean and functional facilities. Conditions were far from perfect, but compared to the days of buckets and barren landscapes, it was a major step forward. Unions like the Screen Actors Guild, SAG, led the charge. SAG introduced rules requiring studios to provide sanitary conditions and protect workers' health. These new standards extended to extras and background actors, ensuring even the most overlooked workers were treated better. Despite the progress, challenges remained. Pests, illnesses, and grueling hours still tested cast and crew, but Hollywood had come a long way from its early days of filth and neglect. The reforms of the mid-20th century laid the groundwork for a cleaner, safer industry. Lights, camera, and odor? Hollywood's brightest stars had some of the worst hygiene habits, and we're about to expose them all. From Clark Gable's dental dilemmas to Lana Turner's rare showers and even Marlon Brando's notorious on-set stench, join us as we pull back the curtain on Tinseltown's smelly secrets. It's time to get real about Hollywood's dirtiest legends. Get ready to be transported back to the golden age of cinema, where the allure often masked some very human flaws. We'll share jaw-dropping stories and intimate details that reveal a side of these stars you've never seen before. Clark Gable. Known for his role in Gone with the Wind, he had a reputation for bad breath. Co-star Vivien Leigh, who played Scarlett O'Hara, often complained about his dental hygiene. Leigh once said, "Kissing Clark Gable in Gone with the Wind was not that exciting. His dentures smelled something awful." This complaint was not isolated. Numerous accounts from those who worked with Gable mentioned his persistent bad breath. The issue stemmed from Gable's dental problems. By the time he starred in Gone with the Wind, he had lost most of his teeth. He wore dentures, which contributed to the odor. His dentist, Charles Pincus, created special dentures for him, but they didn't entirely solve the problem. Despite this, Gable's charm and acting skills kept him in high demand. On the set of Mutiny on the Bounty, co-star Charles Lton also struggled with Gable's breath. Lton reportedly said, "I can't stand the man's foul breath." This caused tension during filming, but it was tolerated due to Gable's star power. In 1958, Gable's dental issues were discussed in an interview with his close friend, actor Frank Capra. Capra mentioned that Clark was a wonderful guy, but his breath could knock you over. This was a known fact among Hollywood insiders, yet it never affected Gable's career. Gable's hygiene issues extended beyond his breath. He had a reputation for not bathing regularly. Actress Loretta Young, who starred with him in Call of the Wild, found his lack of cleanliness challenging. Young recalled that Clark was rugged and handsome, but he had a distinct odor that was hard to ignore. His hygiene habits didn't change much over the years. On the set of The Misfits, co-star Marilyn Monroe and director John Huston had to deal with his smell. Despite these hygiene issues, Gable remained a beloved figure in Hollywood. His charisma and talent overshadowed his personal habits. He continued to receive roles and accolades throughout his career. In 1960, during the filming of The Misfits, Gable suffered a heart attack, leading to his death shortly after. Even then, the focus remained on his legendary career rather than his hygiene. His legacy as the king of Hollywood remained intact. Joan Crawford. An iconic actress known for films like Mildred Pierce, she had a reputation for being a cleanliness fanatic, yet rumors circulated about her personal odor. Despite her obsession with cleanliness, Crawford's body odor was a subject of whispered conversations among co-stars and crew members. Crawford was known for her meticulous grooming habits. She reportedly took ice-cold baths to maintain her skin's firmness and had a rigorous skincare routine. However, her insistence on using heavy, musky perfumes to cover any natural body odor often had the opposite effect. Co-star Bette Davis famously commented, "She reeks of Chanel No. 5 and sweat." Despite her efforts to stay immaculate, Crawford's intense body odor became noticeable during long shooting days. On the set of Whatever Happened to Baby Jane, her co-star Bette Davis found it challenging to work closely with her. Davis mentioned in a private letter that Joan's smell was unbearable after a few hours on set, describing it as a mix of heavy perfume and something else she couldn't quite identify. Crew members also had stories about Crawford's hygiene. An anonymous crew member from Johnny Guitar recalled, "Joan was always spraying perfume, but it didn't mask the fact that she didn't shower every day." This statement reflected a common sentiment among those who worked with her. Despite these issues, Crawford's professionalism and talent overshadowed her hygiene problems. She was known for being demanding and maintaining high standards on set. Crawford's obsessive cleaning habits extended to her home life. Friends and family reported that she would scrub her house obsessively, sometimes to the point of damaging her skin. Her daughter, Christina Crawford, wrote in her memoir, "Mommy Dearest, Mother would clean until her hands bled, but she rarely took the same care with her own body." Marlon Brando. Renowned for his roles in A Streetcar Named Desire and The Godfather, he was not just famous for his acting. Brando had a well-known reputation for poor hygiene. Co-stars and directors frequently commented on his lack of cleanliness, which became an integral part of his off-screen persona. Brando's hygiene issues were apparent on the set of A Streetcar Named Desire. Co-star Vivien Leigh, who played Blanche Dubois, found it difficult to work with him due to his hygiene. Leigh remarked, "Marlon never seemed to care about cleanliness. It was tough to share close scenes with him." This sentiment was echoed by others who worked with him. Director Elia Kazan, who directed Brando in both A Streetcar Named Desire and On the Waterfront, also noted his hygiene habits. Kazan mentioned in an interview that Marlon was a brilliant actor, but he had no regard for personal hygiene, and his natural smell was often overpowering on set. Despite this, Kazan continued to work with Brando, recognizing his immense talent. Brando's hygiene became a notorious part of his method of acting. During the filming of The Wild One, he reportedly wore the same costume for the entire shoot, rarely washing it. Co-star Mary Murphy said, "Marlon would stay in character all day, even if it meant not bathing or changing clothes. It added to his authenticity, but it wasn't pleasant for the rest of us." The issue persisted throughout his career. On the set of The Godfather, his co-stars had similar experiences. James Caan, who played Sonny Corleone, once joked that Marlon would show up on set smelling like he had just rolled out of bed, adding that it was part of his charm. Despite these complaints, Brando's performances continued to receive critical acclaim. Brando's personal life also reflected his casual attitude toward hygiene. He was known for his unkempt appearance and disregard for social norms. In a 1973 interview with Rolling Stone, he admitted, "I never saw the point in showering every day. It's a waste of water and time." This nonchalant approach endeared him to some but alienated others. Even in his later years, Brando's hygiene habits remained unchanged. On the set of Apocalypse Now, director Francis Ford Coppola struggled with Brando's behavior, including his lack of cleanliness. Coppola recounted that Marlon was difficult in many ways, including his hygiene, but his performance was worth the trouble. Brando's hygiene issues did not significantly impact his career. His talent and charisma overshadowed his personal habits. He continued to receive accolades and remained a sought-after actor throughout his life. His roles in The Godfather and Last Tango in Paris solidified his status as a Hollywood legend. Public perception of Brando remained largely positive. Fans admired his rebellious spirit and dedication to his craft. The media often focused on his acting prowess and controversial statements rather than his hygiene. Bette Davis. As an icon of classic Hollywood, she was known for her intense performances and strong personality. However, Davis also had a reputation for poor personal hygiene, primarily due to her heavy smoking habit. Her smoking led to persistent bad breath, which became a common complaint among her co-stars. Davis was a notorious chain smoker, often seen with a cigarette in hand both on and off the set. This habit contributed to her bad breath, which was frequently mentioned by those who worked closely with her. Co-star George Brent, who appeared with Davis in several films, once remarked that Bette was a tremendous actress, but her breath was quite overpowering. Her smoking was not just a minor issue, it was a significant part of her daily life. Davis smoked up to 4 packs of cigarettes a day. This constant smoking not only affected her breath, but also left a lingering smell on her clothes and in her hair. On the set of All About Eve, co-star Ann Baxter had to endure Davis's bad breath during their numerous close scenes. Baxter later recalled that working with Bette was a great experience, but it was challenging at times because of her smoking, as the smell was always there. Her personal assistant, Catherine Cermak, who worked with Davis during the latter part of her career, also mentioned her hygiene habits in her memoir. Cermak wrote, "Bette was particular about many things, but her smoking habit was something she never addressed. It was part of who she was." Despite these hygiene issues, Davis's career was filled with accolades and awards. She won 2 Academy Awards for Best Actress for her roles in Dangerous, 1935, and Jezebel, 1938, and received 10 nominations in total. Her powerful performances and commanding presence on screen overshadowed any personal flaws. Davis's hygiene issues were not widely known to the public during her lifetime. The media focused more on her professional achievements and personal dramas rather than her smoking habit and its effects. This allowed her to maintain a strong public image as a glamorous and talented star. In her later years, Davis's smoking took a toll on her health. She suffered a stroke in 1983, which affected her appearance and speech. Despite her health issues, Davis continued to work, making television appearances and writing her memoirs. Lana Turner. As a glamorous star known for films like The Postman Always Rings Twice and Peyton Place, she was one of Hollywood's most alluring actresses. Despite her glamorous on-screen persona, Turner had a reputation for inconsistent personal hygiene, which became a point of discussion among her co-stars and those who worked closely with her. Turner's hygiene habits were influenced by her demanding career and personal struggles. She often neglected regular bathing, relying heavily on perfume to mask body odor. Her personal assistant, Beverly Adland, who was also a close confidant, mentioned in her memoir, Lana, the Lady, the Legend, the Truth, that Turner sometimes went days without a bath. On the set of The Postman Always Rings Twice, co-star John Garfield noticed Turner's hygiene issues. Garfield, known for his straightforwardness, reportedly commented to a friend, "Lana is stunning on screen, but off screen she sometimes smells like she hasn't bathed in days. The perfume can only do so much." Turner's heavy use of makeup also contributed to her hygiene problems. She often slept with her makeup on to save time in the morning, which led to skin issues and an overall lack of cleanliness. Makeup artist Del Armstrong, who worked with Turner on several films, noted that Lana's skin suffered because she rarely took off her makeup at night, as she was always in a rush and didn't prioritize proper hygiene. Despite these issues, Turner's talent and beauty made her a beloved figure in Hollywood. She was nominated for an Academy Award for Best Actress for her role in Peyton Place and continued to receive praise for her performances throughout her career. Her charisma and screen presence often overshadowed her personal flaws. Publicly, Turner's hygiene habits were not widely known. The media focused on her film career, numerous marriages, and her dramatic personal life, including the infamous stabbing incident involving her daughter, Cheryl Crane. This selective coverage helped maintain her glamorous image. Greta Garbo. As the enigmatic star of films like Anna Karenina and Camille, she was known for her beauty and mystique. However, behind her glamorous image, Garbo had a reputation for poor personal hygiene, which became a point of contention for those who worked closely with her. Garbo was famously reclusive and avoided the public eye as much as possible. Her aversion to socializing extended to her personal hygiene habits. Co-star John Gilbert, who worked with her in several silent films, mentioned Garbo's hygiene in private conversations. Garbo's hygiene habits were influenced by her desire for privacy and her minimalist lifestyle. She often avoided the studio's makeup and wardrobe departments, preferring to handle her own grooming. This led to less than ideal hygiene, as noted by those around her. Director Clarence Brown, who directed Garbo in several films, recalled in an interview, "Greta was a perfectionist in her work, but she paid little attention to her personal cleanliness. She believed in natural beauty, even if it meant not showering regularly." Garbo's reclusive nature meant that she often neglected regular bathing and laundry. Her maid, who worked for her in her later years, noted in her memoir that Garbo would wear the same clothes for days and rarely did laundry. Miss Garbo valued her privacy above all else. She didn't like people fussing over her, including with hygiene, her maid wrote. Despite her hygiene issues, Garbo's talent and screen presence were undeniable. She received an Academy Award nomination for Best Actress for her role in Camille and continued to captivate audiences with her performances. Her reclusive nature and lack of personal care became part of her mystique, adding to her allure. Publicly, Garbo's hygiene habits were not well known. The media and her fans focused on her enigmatic persona and her memorable roles. This selective coverage helped maintain her status as a Hollywood legend. Her famous line, "I want to be alone," encapsulated her desire for privacy and contributed to her enduring mystique. Ava Gardner. Celebrated for her beauty and talent in films like The Killers and Mogambo, she was also known for her lackadaisical approach to personal hygiene. Despite her glamorous public image, those who worked closely with Gardner often remarked on her infrequent bathing and other hygiene issues. Gardner's hygiene habits were a result of her carefree lifestyle. She often preferred to live in the moment rather than adhere to strict grooming routines. Frank Sinatra, her third husband, once joked about her hygiene. In his memoir, Sinatra mentioned that Ava was a free spirit who didn't let things like regular baths get in the way of her fun. On the set of Mogambo, co-star Clark Gable noticed Gardner's less-than-perfect hygiene. Gable, who had his own hygiene issues, reportedly commented to a friend that Ava was stunning, but she didn't seem to care much for bathing. This was not an isolated observation. Other co-stars and crew members shared similar experiences. Gardner's makeup artist, Del Armstrong, who worked with her on several films, recalled in an interview, "Ava was one of the most beautiful women in Hollywood, but she didn't prioritize cleanliness. She would sometimes come to the set without having washed her hair for days." Despite this, Armstrong admired Gardner's natural beauty and ability to captivate audiences. Gardner's hygiene problems were not widely known to the public. Her fans adored her for her stunning looks and passionate performances. The media focused on her tumultuous love life and glamorous image, rarely touching upon her personal hygiene. This selective coverage helped maintain her status as a Hollywood icon. Gardner's lifestyle was also influenced by her heavy drinking and late-night partying. She was known for her love of nightlife and often stayed out until the early hours of the morning. This contributed to her lack of a regular hygiene routine. In her autobiography, Ava, My Story, Gardner admitted that she loved to party and live freely, and sometimes hygiene took a backseat to fun. Charlie Chaplin. As the iconic star of silent films such as The Tramp and City Lights, he was revered for his comedic genius and pioneering contributions to cinema. However, behind the scenes, Chaplin had a reputation for poor personal hygiene, which sometimes made working with him difficult for his colleagues. Chaplin's hygiene habits were influenced by his intense focus on his work. He was known for being a perfectionist, often spending long hours on set, which left little time for personal care. Actress Paulette Goddard, who starred alongside Chaplin in Modern Times and was also his wife for a few years, mentioned in interviews that Chaplin's dedication to his craft often overshadowed his attention to hygiene. During the filming of The Great Dictator, Chaplin's co-stars noticed his lack of cleanliness. Jack Oakey, who played Mussolini in the film, recalled in his autobiography, Jack Oakey's Double Takes, that Chaplin's hygiene was a common topic of conversation. Chaplin's hygiene issues extended to his dental care. His close friend and collaborator, Douglas Fairbanks, noted that Chaplin often had bad breath. Fairbanks once joked, Charlie could light up a room with his smile, but you wouldn't want to be too close when he did. Despite these personal hygiene issues, Chaplin's talent and charisma ensured his continued success in Hollywood. His films were groundbreaking, and his performances left a lasting impact on the industry. He received numerous accolades throughout his career, including an honorary Academy Award in 1972 for his contributions to film. Chaplin's personal life was also marked by his hygiene habits. His son, Charles Chaplin Jr., wrote in his memoir, My Father, Charlie Chaplin, about his father's casual approach to personal cleanliness. Chaplin Jr. noted that his dad was always so engrossed in his work that personal hygiene was an afterthought, and he didn't mind skipping a shower if it meant perfecting a scene. Publicly, Chaplin's hygiene issues were not well known. The media and his fans focused more on his cinematic achievements and less on his personal habits. This allowed Chaplin to maintain his image as a beloved figure in the entertainment industry. Rita Hayworth. Known for her roles in classics like Gilda and Covergirl, she was a stunning beauty and one of Hollywood's top stars during the 1940s and 1950s. However, despite her glamorous appearance, Hayworth had a reputation for inconsistent personal hygiene, particularly related to her hair care. Hayworth's most famous feature was her thick, luxurious red hair, which became an iconic symbol of her allure. However, maintaining such a trademark look required considerable effort, and Hayworth often skipped regular washing to keep her hair styled and camera-ready. According to her hairdresser, Helen Hunt, who worked with Hayworth for many years, Rita's hair was her crowning glory, but she didn't wash it frequently. She believed that washing it too often would ruin the style. Her co-star in Gilda, Glenn Ford, noticed Hayworth's approach to hair care. Ford mentioned in a private conversation that Rita's hair was always perfect on screen, but off-screen, you could tell she hadn't washed it in days, considering it a small price to pay for that stunning look. In addition to her hair care habits, Hayworth's personal hygiene was influenced by her busy schedule and numerous health issues. She often struggled with arthritis, which made daily routines, including bathing, challenging. Her daughter, Yasmin Aga Khan, wrote in her memoir, Rita Hayworth, a memoir, about her mother's health struggles and how they affected her personal care. Khan noted, My mother's arthritis made it hard for her to do simple tasks. There were days when she just couldn't manage to take a bath. Hayworth's hygiene issues also extended to her living conditions. During the height of her career, she lived in luxurious homes, but her housekeeping habits were less meticulous. Friends and visitors often noted the disarray in her living spaces.